like to start the Capital Improvement Committee meeting of Tuesday, May 23rd, 2023 at 2:12 PM. Our agenda is the same as it always is typically: review capital requests, discuss 5-year capital plan, and review and approve minutes. We're going to skip over the minutes for this one because I don't know which ones need to be approved and which ones don't. I started looking through my emails and I got a ton of them in there, so I don't know if we've done some of them or not. Just for the minute taker, I noticed that on the ones that I did look at, the recent ones, it's recognizing Ken Vincent as being absent. He has resigned from the committee on March 8th. So he's not on the committee anymore, so we shouldn't be having him as absent on our minutes. I asked to do this meeting a little unusual from what we typically do. We usually wait until budget time and then scramble and try to come up with our list, and trying to be a little more proactive so we have time to properly digest what it is in front of us. And also try to, my thought is, if everybody agrees to it, try to create some sort of system to the request. Now, this past time I had asked Lisa to send out a request to the department heads to get it on a Excel spreadsheet. So we know what the request is, the dollar amount, and the year that it was originally requested. So that way we can keep track of it, because there's always, this fell off, I don't know why it fell off, and to our defense, it's not up to us to keep chasing the project. It's up to them to keep it in front of us. We don't lose sight of it. If they don't ask for it, we really can't keep track of it. So this may help put it there anyway, so then we can see what it is. Time on the list doesn't necessarily make it important. It could be something that was put on there in anticipation of it being needed, but never really became needed, or dropped off and we didn't become aware of it. So if we have them update their list each year, then we'll see that if they did something on their own and eliminated that need, we don't have it in our pile of papers that we carry around all the time. That was my thought on that. I don't know if anybody has anything they want to add to that, or and they agree or disagree with that process.
So has that been done?
No, this is what we're going to do. So this past, and try to do it quick at the last minute, it was a thought, so I had asked Lisa to do it. We actually got something from the school the last time. A little confusing because it says fiscal year 2024 capital projects. I don't think that it will define what we want on this form. We'll give them a blank form that they can use. I would like the date in which they did it, like this year's, if they did it on May 23rd, 2023, we have that there, but then we have a list of it. Up here is a little confusing. It's like, so you want all this stuff in 2024? It's somebody to come in past us, they've got to be able to understand what this means. So just to simplify it a little bit. I also would like to find out from Gene things that we actually got approved at town meeting that are on our to-do list, what the status is of them. So then we have that each year. So then
Usually does that, doesn't she?
I want something a little more formalized for the committee itself, so then we have that each year. So then let's take the roof on this building. Say we approved it in 2016. Any particular reason why this isn't done yet? Is there enough money in there? Because that's a critical thing for us to understand. If it was pre-COVID, let's use the dump truck, because that's very recent for an example on us that we just had, was approved at the last meeting. We put it on the list, on our list at 215,000, and then it went to 265. Talking to Adam the other day, he was informed that it is now 285. That's a problem because we only approved 265. So now he has to go through the specs and make sure that they didn't add extra things on there and figure out how he's going to make that work. But that truck there went up 30%. If in 215 to 285, $70,000, it's 30% increase. So if we approve something 3 or 4 years ago, is there enough money in there? If not, we need to think about that, because we're spending our entire purse and we're not necessarily looking at the jobs that have to be done. I want to make sure that we can accomplish the jobs once they come up. This roof up here, we approved $345,000 or something like that, and I don't know if that's going to be enough.
If I may, Mike?
Yes.
According, we talk about this in building facilities too, as to when these items are going to be done.
Right.
And we have been told that first they wanted to get the vents up
Yep,
there.
yep, the HVAC, the
Yeah.
rooftop units.
Yes, and so that was done. And then I believe you were aware and provided some insight as to the roof and some of the copper around
Right.
the edges outside. And now that Weston and Sampson has come on board as house doctor type of thing, they are going to be given some advice regarding the copper. and what-
Yeah, they're going to come up with a scope of work for that.
So because my question had been, well, when are we going to proceed now that the vents have been taken care of and we've got a perspective on that, and getting our quotes and what's going to be going out for bids and on the roof? And where are we on that? So
Right.
we're supposed to be, building facilities is supposed to be getting that information.
Right. And what I'm cautious of is not having, for lack of a better description, cross-contamination from boards and committees and stuff, because on the Board of Selectmen, I'm actually working with Weston and Sampson and went through that. So that's why it's on the top of my mind as what it is. For us as a committee on capital, I'm not concerned about when they're going to do it or stuff like that, because that's not part of our charge to do it. But at the same time, if it's coming up and say we have to go back then, let's use the fire alarm, that they went to town meeting 14
Yeah.
times, and when it started at 28,000, is up to 114 or 104 or something
Yeah.
like that. We need to think about that, because if we're going into the next process, the budget process, should we stay with the capital plan? Is there something coming up that we're going to have to make sure that we get these things? At some point, this roof will no longer fear the weather. You can only patch it so many times, so it's just something to think about.
Right. And one of the other things that was talked about too regarding that is, and I think it was on there as if there's enough money to do the roof over the elevator.
Yep, that's going to be
Because
put
that
on.
needs to be done.
That's going to be considered as an alternate, like we
Yeah.
did, we talked about that at whichever meeting that we approved it at.
Right.
So, and that's continuing through, it's still discussed that way,
Yep.
because it's going to have to be corrected at some point. Yes, Sally?
What's it called? Your doctor, house doctor called?
House doctor, I guess, yeah.
Weston and Sampson.
Okay. Who's paying for all of that?
That's in there, but the selectmen's budget. Oh, it's been decided, right?
Well, this is my understanding. They're under contract as quote, a house doctor. All they are is the architect of record for 3 years.
Yeah.
All right, so to help us, so we don't have to keep, every single time we do this, the timing gets eaten up with advertisement and going through all this nonsense, not nonsense, but the process each time. And it just delays it so far that you're not going to get the things done. You're still safe. Yes, we can leave at 3 o'clock.
But-
But
It also,
To answer Ellie, and finish answering Ellie's question, is each project will fund the services, is from what I understand. So
So, yeah, who's paying them to do this right now? I mean, is it the selectmen's budget, or, I mean, like, if the library used them or something like that, would that come from the library?
it would come from the library. So getting back to the roof, if we appropriated $345,000 for the roof and their design services are $3, then the $3 would come out of, it's not $3. The $3 would come out of that $345, not out of the library budget or the selectmen's budget or any other budget. It would just like every other project that we do, that's part of the design work.
So the project has to be approved by town meeting first with a funding
Yes,
amount?
yep, yep. So we did approve, I believe we approved some money for design services for the highway department. So that, I think there's some town meeting money as well as opera money that was appropriated towards that. That is going to be paying, that's part of the design services. So we're going to, for the highway department portion of it, a conceptual drawing and a budget will be done on that first phase, and then it has to go to town meeting to even get to the next phase. Everybody good on that subject?
Are they also the house doctor for the school?
Is the house doctor for the school? I don't know that answer. I don't know.
You don't know if this Sampson and Weston or whatever?
Weston and Sampson, if it would be involved in the school projects, I'm not sure. I don't know, I don't think they have any projects that would require an engineer anyways, at this point, other than a oil tank or something like that. So is everybody in agreement to try to come up with a template for the department, so then we know the year that it was
originally requested.
requested,
Yep.
as well as I would like to see a funding source on there as to what it is, if there is a potential funding source. And I'm going to give you an example. Recently, talking with Pat, he has an issue with his server for the cable. I don't know if anybody's noticed, but you're not getting the live streaming and stuff at home. It's because of the server has issues. So he's currently working on that, and that's what I was talking to him about before the meeting. He has up until September in order for us to get it onto the warrant, which means we need to do it ahead of time. But if he can correct the problem, he has a solution that it should buy him a little bit of time. Ultimately, he'll have to upgrade this equipment. But that funding will come out of the cable receipts or the cable budget that they have. And they had, if you remember back around 16 or 17, we put $50,000 aside for the studio that was going to go, I think, above this room. And that's what it might be above that room over there. But that would be the funding source for that, and that's what I mean by on their request to have a funding source, because that's critical for us as a committee to know, all right, is that taking money out of our so-called budget, or is it something that it goes through the process, but it has its own funding source? It could be something, police department, if they need some equipment, but they know they're getting a grant for it or whatever, that may come through that. I don't know, grants might be exempt from capital. I don't
But,
remember.
but I thought the understanding was that we still need to know, even though departments are getting a grant, the capital committee needs to know what the amount is for whatever project is, just so we're aware.
Right. Yeah, and that's where this spreadsheet or the Excel format will come in handy, because then Brandon had this microphone on last year, and he got a grant for it. Now he doesn't need it anymore. It drops off our list, so then we have an updated list. Right now, it's very confusing to try to look through all this stuff and keep track of what
Yeah,
gets
it's
done and what
getting
doesn't
fat.
get done.
Yeah,
Right.
I want to use all this paper.
Yeah.
So Mike, I know there was some discussion, I believe, as we were kind of winding down or getting into what was going to come before or beyond the capital plan. And in a couple.
What, the 5-year plan, you mean?
Yeah, in a couple of instances, there was things that were put in place of.
Such as the tables?
Yeah.
Okay, so,
If I
yep,
may.
no,
So I was under the impression, or maybe my thought was, maybe we should ask the departments to take a look now at what they're asking for next year for capital, and
oh, no, absolutely, because that's the problem that I went through with, in the papers is all the school stuff, right?
right.
Every single thing says fiscal year 2024. We can't do that, so.
Right.
And I don't think that was their intention. I think it was just the way they labeled it up top, and then when they filled it in down here, but we don't know the thought process. We only look at what we got, and it says fiscal year 24. How are we going to do all this in 24? We can't do all that in 24.
Right.
So I don't know when this is all needed. And you ask that question, and the answer will be from anybody. It doesn't matter what department. Well, I need it now, that's why I put it on there. Okay. But you can't have it now. We have to figure it out, what makes sense. So getting back to the things coming off the list, that was just an unusual situation where the primary school was fortunate enough to get the tables donated to them from Blackstone Valley. I actually seen them, and they're in much better shape than the other ones. I went through there with the gas company survey for the equipment there. But they had the failure of the rooftop units that last August on the administration end of the building, so it was kind of a logical change. It went from 30,000 to 36,000 or something like that, but it was something that was needed, and we solved it. And it's replaced, not repaired, so it's replaced. We won't hopefully look at it for quite some time. But I think it was a justified explanation that they gave us to do it.
Yeah.
I would be very questionable if you fought to get I'll use the tables for an example.
Yeah,
You fought
that's
to get
the
the
way I
tables
feel.
year after year after year, and then all of a sudden, well, no, we don't really need, but it was legitimate. They actually they almost looked, they're just a different color, but they looked like they were the exact same table. So it's something they already used. And you could look at them, they're very orderly standing up on one side, and you look at the other side of the room, you see the old tables, and the seats are all crooked and everything else. So it was an easy argument to say they needed the new tables, but they were fortunate to get those other ones, and it bought them more time. I don't know how everybody feels about it. I would be interested to see, if you recall, on our last go-around, we had all these requests for guardrails at the school, wooden guardrails at the school. I wouldn't mind actually seeing these things in order to have a better idea. It's hard to believe that all these guardrails are no good. I'm not saying that they aren't, or they are. It's just, I would like to see them because it's a pretty big request.
Yeah, some people came to your last meeting and wanting a guardrail put up, and they wanted to put up wood on their property.
Yeah, that was, on 16.
But then it had to be And John Furno, I think, said something like, well, they just don't hold up as well as the metal ones.
Correct.
And so that sounded logical to me, why you would put the metal ones up, even though they're ugly.
Yeah, and I would assume that it's done that way at the school for a couple different reasons. One is aesthetics, because the wood's going to be much more attractive than I know, I'm just going through the motions, but the metal ones have a more of an industrial look for it, but the metal ones are more important on like Route 16 because you're trying to hold back 50-mile-an-hour vehicle traffic, or somebody trying to get the new record on the sign in the center of town. But they don't really use wooden, up north they use them more. So,
They don't have guardrails up in Vermont, do they, Shirley?
well, I didn't say out of the country, I said up north.
Yeah, there are guardrails, yes.
Right, but when we have situations like that where it's such a large expense, it's hard to put your name on it if you don't really understand what it is, why they're getting
So
changed.
you're asking to go on a field trip?
I wouldn't mind, something like that would be, even if it's not a field trip, just on your own, just if we knew where they were, if they gave us an actual map of the grounds, that, all right, we want this one here behind the middle school and this one over here next to the primaries, you could drive by in your leisure, because if we
But also-
go as a field trip, we have to call a meeting.
Yeah.
So if we go in your leisure, you can just pop through there on a weekend and say,
Are
yeah,
they,
those things are terrible, we need to change them.
and what's their life expectancy too?
Yeah, well, they'd have to give that to us, yeah.
Because that's in the bylaw too, it has to last longer than,
Well, it's going to be more than 4 years.
Yeah,
4 years
okay.
and $10,000, so it's definitely more than 4 years. If they only last 4 years, then they're not even using pine, because you can put a pine post in your paddock and make it last 4 years.
So, if I may.
Yes.
So it gets back to my thought on, starting early, asking them to, each department to review what they've got on capital for the upcoming year, or the next phase, not in July, but, or if there's something they need, it's an emergency, well, yeah, you can understand that goes on the warrant. But having every department take a look at what they're requesting in this 5-year plan, and then, or do they already know they need to put something in place of it? Because if we're sticking with that amount for capital for that year until we get further along. And then already, when we should be meeting, say, in the fall for capital, are they still good with their item they're requesting?
Yeah,
That's in the 5-year plan.
I wouldn't be crazy about changing the 5-year plan.
I'm not saying,
I know, I'm just, hear
just
me
if
out.
they have something that is coming up, so we don't get taken by surprise.
It would have to be really extraordinary for it to, I think that was very unusual for the school to have that situation where you think about it, they had something fail, and then they had something donated that almost for dollar
Oh, I have no
exchange. So, no, but is that going to happen again? I think we'll be waiting a while for that to happen again. That's an extremely unusual situation. I'll still stand behind what we did last year with Ken Vincent and everybody else once we established that stabilization account idea. We had a really good process to establish this 5-year plan, and I think we have a pretty good plan now. I wouldn't want to leave the door open that, so surely just let me know in a couple months if you think that's still good.
That's not where I'm coming.
Yep, no, but I want to make sure, because that's how I understood it, so there's people watching it, right? So I want to make sure that they understand what we're talking about as a group. if we have, my other thought of starting early was, you have an uninfluenced decision-making. You don't know what tomorrow is bringing.
True.
Now you have to tell me what you need, instead of waiting until I get my paycheck, and then you're telling me what you want. And I think it's going to be a different mentality process to go through it. You're going to get a more genuine request process, because you have to be, until you know, you have to be conservative. As far as trying to spend all the money that we're supposedly getting ahead of time, I'm not a buyer in that. No, but I'm just, I want to get past that part of it, and just so we can have a good process. And it is actually going to help the departments, so then they have a good idea what they need to do, and they can figure out if they can get a grant for tasers, use that for an example. So then, all right, there's grants coming up, let's work really hard on that, because
Or
the chance,
put it in their operating budget.
or put it in their operating budget. That is nothing to do with us, that's part of the department head with the town administrator and our finance. No, I get it. And I just try to keep reeling us back in so we can stay focused on what we're doing. But everybody knows that the feelings about whether it's tasers, whether it's cruisers for the fire department or whatever, I'm a firm believer that it should be in part of their operating budget, so we're not faced with this bickering back and forth as to whether or not they need it. They should rely on the departments to decide what they need, and then they have to go advocate for themselves on their budget. And instead of coming to us, we're kind of unfair, because we really don't have intimate knowledge of what they have. Who are we to decide whether or not it's good or bad? So,
And we get taken on a guilt trip a lot of times, too.
if you fall into it, I don't fall into a guilt trip, because it's just business. It's nothing more, nothing less. If you do a good job selling it, I guess you'll get me to buy into it. If you don't do a good job selling, then I don't buy into it. But anyways, I think tightening up this process, and the biggest goal with this particular meeting is to tighten up our process, so then we can establish a system for it, because at some point we'll all jump off, and somebody else will have to fill our shoes. So I want to make sure we give them something to work with.
Just as a point of clarification on my part.
Yes.
I automatically accept the fact that we voted to put $360,000 away each year, or,
Yep.
point out, $360,000 each year is going to match the highway.
Chapter 90. Yep.
And I automatically accept the fact that we're transferring to a special stabilization fund, the $100,000. My other point is that sometime, like what happened at the school, it could happen with, say, some issue at either the fire department or whatever department, that they find that they need something to replace, like what happened, as long as they stay within that range that's there.
As far as the 360 and the 100,000?
No, that's that to me is untouchable.
No, okay, no, I just want to make sure, because
Yeah.
it
We-
flowed into the sentence, so I wanted to make sure. So those two are standalone, so then
Yeah.
the other items, absolutely. So everything's subject to change.
Unless,
And I don't
we
want
as
to be
a
difficult about it,
committee-
but I don't want to be easy about it either,
Nope.
I think we all do a good job, and we work hard with our thoughts and input to get it to where we have our plans. So I think then somebody has to be pretty compelling to get us to change our mind and agree to it.
Because we've looked at it
Yep.
in long range, that helps us
Right.
in our,
Yep.
and as long as we have maybe a little bit sooner, how much are we going to, or what is the final figure for funding for the capital?
Oh, for the capital?
We weren't
year.
told, yeah, but we don't know. We never know.
Well, I know that,
Yeah.
but
And why?
it kept going on and on and
Right.
on, and we didn't get.
Right, fortunately, we have a good problem to have, is we finally have money to
Yeah.
be able to address some of our capital needs.
That's right.
The roads have been terrible for a very long period of time. People are still complaining because their road's not getting fixed. Okay, so, but you can't fix them all at once, so
That's
it's,
right.
it's a little at a time, and you chip through it. And what's not understood, which has been said many times, but people want to listen to what they want to listen to. The roads are all been rated. There's 88 miles of roads in town. They all have a rating, and the rating is based off of traffic and conditions and other factors, and that's how they're being addressed. So you could, Cummings Court, where the infamous little sign is, there's potholes on that, but you have like 2 cars a day going down, and I'm not saying that they're not needed, but there's other roads that are in really bad shape. Well, Northwest Main Street, that thing was terrible forever, because I come back every single Sunday, I come back that way from Market Basket, so I don't go the same way, I go in a loop. That was in terrible shape, now it's like, wow, it's like a new road. But it's a lot heavily traveled compared to Cummings Court, so obviously that's going to score higher on the list.
Yeah,
I,
I think that, and I've said this before, that it's nice to drive on now, but people are speeding on it as well.
that's, yeah.
Yeah, right, and I've said in the past, sometimes it's better not to fix roads because it will make.
From a speed standpoint, and a lot of people don't stop, we still got 17 minutes. A lot of people don't stop and consider this, right?
Yeah.
But the fire department has very heavy vehicles and the cruisers are all over the place, they're like ants, right? But that beats up their vehicles, whether they're going slow or fast, it just beats up their vehicles, and we just pay more maintenance, and it's just an endless battle, so.
I believe that's a 40-mile-an-hour zone over there.
It is, it
They
is.
do not read
Yeah.
stop signs.
Well,
Well, it's 30
we
in
do sit over
the
there.
highly
Yeah, that's a problem,
residential
too.
area.
That-
No,
I
but
think
you
it's
can't do
excessive.
anything about that because
No.
that was,
40 seems awful high.
It is. and I
no, but that
agree
was
with it.
done by the
DOT.
state.
Yeah, it's
The state did it, and
Right.
the whole purpose of the state doing it, it was a freebie. I learned this in Sturbridge, because they chose not to take that same grant, because they were, if you accepted the grant, then you had to accept forever what they established as your speeds
Yeah.
in town. And so you can't change those speeds.
Yeah, you have to be careful when you ask for that study, because sometimes they go up, not down. And the 40 wouldn't go up, but if you have a 25 or 30 mile an hour zone, that could increase easily.
Right, exactly.
That's a fast speed for that area. I totally
Yeah.
agree, because, someone could be going 50 miles an hour, and you're still 10 miles over the speed limit. Is the police going to stop you for that? It's only 10 miles over the speed limit. Technically, they can.
Depends on how many times you went by them.
Yeah, so it's one of those things.
Anybody have any issue with our grading process that we had before? Everybody comfortable with that? It's a good time to start this, because we're not in the middle of crunch time.
Yeah, white knuckles.
As everybody's looking through that, we had, I received a couple different emails. No, actually, it was two emails. One I already talked about, which was the cable. So that could potentially be coming before us. And then there was another one from the Library Building Focus Group from Justin. inquiring about capital potentially participating in a focus group. My own personal opinion is I think we shouldn't do that as members of this board or committee, because we're looking at requests. We're not part of the planning process or something like that, and it could be misunderstood as to what our role is when it comes to the capital process. I think it should come to us fresh so we can look at it properly, and that's my own personal feelings on that. Everybody's obviously open to their own.
Because how do other people feel? Because we're meeting tonight, the trustees, so, and so,
Because we don't do it with anybody else, with any other department or anything.
yeah, but who else has had focus groups recently? The last focus group I went to was with the library, 15 years ago, maybe.
Yeah.
So, and I think they're trying to, because I would guess, I'm
Yep,
not
no,
doing this.
that's fine.
Justin and what's her name is doing it, and Mary Brainey, and they're sort of going along, trying to figure out what to. They were going to have it, isolated to things like capital and finance coming, and building and facilities, all coming together in one group, and now they're not doing that anymore because it was too hard to schedule everybody for it. So
Right.
now you have your choice. So I figure I'm going to go listen to all of them. I probably won't
Yeah.
talk in any of them, but I'm just curious of what people say, and that they have an opportunity to focus.
It's an interesting thing. I'm just concerned about influencing our position on the committee is the only thing that I'm concerned about.
But you could
Because somebody
go
could
to
turn around.
just listen.
Huh?
You could go and listen to one of them.
Somebody's going to ask me a question, so I couldn't do that myself. But I participate in a hypothetical situation. I participate in this focus group for a department, and then I have another department that wants something. And even though it's a genuine in favor of the one that I participated in the focus group, I could be viewed as you were influenced in that, and you're not really listening to it. So for those reasons, I would just stay away from it and just bring me very fresh information. I can just sit there and digest it, and if it makes sense, then we champion for it. If it doesn't make sense, then we voice our opinion to it. That's what I'll do as an individual. Everybody's open to do whatever they want to do with that. I just think it could be a problem. Because you also have the school department that says that we don't pay attention to their tractor. But then I'm going to be on a focus group for something else. But we have a bunch of stuff, so we'll be very busy with focus groups. So,
Well, unless I consider it Kubota, I'm not in
Yeah.
favor of John Deere's.
yeah. So on the next, what I wrote down on the paper that I had, on the next meeting, we're going to discuss the capital dollar amount thresholds. We'll get some,
So, yeah, and
I'll put that on the next one so we can talk about it and see.
And the up-to-date one is online through the town clerk's office, right?
It should be under,
So
I think it's
I'm gonna
under our
read through it.
general.
I thought I had read
It should be under our general bylaws for capital.
Yeah, no, I'll look into that, because I have a funny feeling that we could just move it around, we didn't have to go to town.
And I could be totally wrong on it. I can't keep track of all this nonsense that I get involved in, so.
This is
I
town
could
government,
most
it's
likely,
not
I
nonsense.
could most likely be incorrect.
When do you want to have the next meeting?
That'll be the next subject. Why, do you have a date in mind?
No, I don't. I'm good. Just wondering.
We have the vice chairman making a request to know when his next meeting would be. Anybody have any thoughts as to when you would want the next meeting?
Well, you're
It's a
very
nice-
busy.
I mean,
Very busy.
wow.
It's a nice shade of red you turned.
Thank you, I appreciate it.
Yeah, no problem.
Brandon-
Feeling a little warm,
A little bit,
Yeah,
yeah.
all right.
Hopefully you can squeeze this in.
Yeah. I'll
So-
make it work.
All right.
I don't have the bylaws in front of me, but I think I remember seeing something about discussion should be started in the fall.
The what should be started?
Discussions or
About
meetings
capital.
for the
Oh,
capital.
probably. That's the
I-
whole goal of doing this, now that we got through the trauma that we just went through. We can start fresh and there's no pressure on us. Doing this in February or March, I don't know about everybody else, but I get pretty frustrated with it.
Yeah.
We don't know how much.
How long has it been doing this?
Well, we used to start,
I mean, ever since I've been on, and I've been on for longer than I care to admit, it's always,
Were you still working?
yeah,
So it's been more than 15 years.
yeah, yeah. Right, exactly.
okay, so when our prior administrator was here, when he sent out the budget
Yeah.
requests for
Yeah.
the departments, he
Capital
also
requests?
included
Oh.
any capital requests.
Yeah.
But that hasn't been happening.
And that was in January anyway, that he
No,
would send it
I
out.
don't think so. I think it was the end of the, or he
Yeah,
sent it out.
and I don't know what the process is supposed to be, and the only comment I could make is everybody has different styles how they do things. Obviously, everybody doesn't do things the way I do it, because we'd have a big problem.
Oh, I agree with that.
Yeah. But
This was the administration, okay?
yeah,
The administrator would send out requests for capital
yeah,
budget, I mean, for their budget requests.
budget requests, yeah.
And along with that, he also asked if they had, he used to
Right.
get a separate.
Yeah, he's doing it a little different. What I would like to do as a committee is set it up that we actually send out the request in with the format that we want, instead of we're getting all kinds of crazy things. We get regular emails, we have the old request forms, we have spreadsheet. Let's formalize it, just get it set up into one process,
Yeah.
so then we
Yeah.
can see it.
I agree.
And if it's sent back in an Excel format, then if you need to do your own record keeping, you want to play around with it, you can. It doesn't matter, play around with it, because we'll have our master one in the book. But it'll be easier to try to keep track of what it is. I don't know if we necessarily need all that wording on the request. I would like to see, and maybe it needs to be there, but I would like to see the year it was requested, the dollar amount, and the funding
And we used
source.
to get that.
So then, well, and up to every year, if we put the reliance onto that department, then it's up to them. We don't have to, so what'd you have last year? Oh, I don't have that page no more, right? They give it to us. We have a fresh one, we can look at it and say, yeah, it's the same as last year. Take last year's, there you go, Ellie, you got some more scrap paper. But it'll be a lot cleaner for us. We're not chasing stuff around. And if it's in this format, town administrator or whoever it is that needs to see this thing to help them with their budget, they can see this stuff that's in there. It'll be a lot easier to keep track of. So if nobody's opposed to that, that's what I'm gonna suggest. I'll work on a little sample thing. I'll have Lisa send it around to everybody. Pat's-
And is it, has all the heating systems been changed around? I mean, like the library got the heat pumps or whatever they're called.
They got the heat pumps. I believe they also got a new water heater.
Oh, well, we paid for that.
Right. Well,
So-
whoever paid for it, I believe there's a new water heater in
Yeah.
there, so now we're not running.
And no oil.
This ginormous boiler to heat up enough water to wash your hands.
Which we tried to do several years ago and were told, oh, we need a backup. I just didn't
Well, for the
get that.
heating system, so when you're, and the heat pumps, and I don't know where the technology is right now, I don't pay that much attention to it. When they were starting to become very popular, you had to have a secondary source of heat, because if temperature drops too low, they don't work.
But they
I
all
believe
worked
that
when we went below.
the library has what they call hyperheat in there, so it works in the lower
Why,
temperatures.
because all the employees are hot, or?
Yeah. Yeah. A lot of hot flashes, yeah.
Justin?
Yeah, Justin, yeah. You ever notice him walking down the street? But anyways, I think we should wait at least a month before we have a meeting. I don't know how anybody feels about summertime, it doesn't matter to me. One day is the same as the next. But Pat needs some time to do his research to find out some more information of the direction he's going to go in for that server. I can have Lisa reach out to the different departments. I'll have her generate something. You just respond back to her whether or not you agree with the format as to how we're going to put it. I say we just try something to get it out there, and we can always refine it a little bit as we move along. That's easy enough. But if it's simple that we can read it and understand it, they almost captured what we wanted, but because it says fiscal year 2024, it's very misleading. Is that the year that they wanted, or is that the year they produced this? So
Or the
just a simple
yeah.
date over here or down the bottom of when they made, so you can look at it and say, this thing's from 2020, we don't want this one. It'll be a lot easier. And then each year, we just replace it with their updated version, because some of their things are gonna either drop off the list, or they may add to their list. So at least then we know what we're dealing with.
I gotta get down there. Like,
All right, yeah, you're gonna turn into a pumpkin in a minute, so you better run down the secret stairs, go by Travis, and say, I was just in the other room.
That's right. All right, Ben,
Right.
text me when the next meeting is, and I'll be all set.
Do you want to wait?
Can we just make a motion to adjourn, and because we're gonna have to stop because our quorum is
Yep.
leaving?
I move that we adjourn as of 3 o'clock.
I second it.
Motion's made and seconded, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.